is VSiN, the sports betting network. This is the VSiN Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Good morning, happy Wednesday, and welcome into the VSiN Morning Line. I'm Grace Remington with Michael Lombardi and Harrison Sanford. It is the absolute best time of year. We got MLB playoffs, we got WNBA playoffs, we have NFL, college football, and soon hockey is on the way. We have a jam-packed show for you today. Let me show you what we got on tap. 4 different guests joining the show today. We have Will Hill in this hour, host of the Shoulda Bet More podcast, joining us with his best bets. Then at 8:30 Eastern, Dave Shoemate, a college football analyst of SEC Unfiltered, joining us with a walk around the SEC right now, an outlook for some of those teams. Then at 9:15 Eastern, our own Adam Burke joining the show with his best bets in football and baseball. And Danny Green, pro basketball player, joining us with some special news to end the show at 9:30 Eastern, so set your alarm for that. Coming up in this hour, we're going to give you a Tuesday betting recap of our bets last night, taking a look at some of the NFL market movements on these spreads, and then Michael Lombardi's writing spotlight, why NFL bettors should study the fourth quarter. He's going to break that down for us, and we're getting into an offer you can't refuse or a bet I'm doomed to lose with some of those longer shot plays. And, of course, Will Hill joining us at the bottom of the hour with his best bets. So, Harrison, first, we both had several bets we were giving out last night. Want to go to you first with the WNBA semifinal round of action there. How did your play go?
Yeah, as a New York Liberty fan, I'm happy that they won. As a New York Liberty bettor, not so happy. Jonquel Jones, I had her to get a double-double last night. She only finished with 8 rebounds, even though her streak against Aja Wilson would lead you to believe that she was able to get a playoff double-double or get a double-double. She was not able to do that. Fun game nonetheless. Aces end up covering the 4.5-point spread. I think the most interesting thing that happened in this game and that maybe will inform some bettors going forward, Kelsey Plum and our head coach, Becky Hammond, did not get along too well at the end of the game, and Kelsey Plum was benched for multiple important possessions down the stretch of that game. So going to be interested to see how that kind of pans out on the end. And then you also had the Lynx getting another win over the Connecticut Sun. Lynx in good position to be in the WNBA Finals after winning the Commissioner's Cup earlier this season.
All right, sounds good. Let's go to the MLB now. I went 3-0 last night, so that's a pretty fun way to start the playoffs. Let's run through those bets. Tigers first 5 money line. That's one that I gave on the show. It wasn't an official play. This is why, if you're a listener, if you're a viewer, you need a VSiN Pro subscription, because 2 of these plays I posted to the site an hour after the show. Just had to do a little bit more thinking. So props to you if you're already a VSiN Pro subscriber, but that's where you can get picks from all of our cappers. But Tigers first 5 moneyline cashes at plus 110. They were up 3-0 after 5 innings, ended up winning the game 3-1. Tarek Skubal was flawless, as he usually is, allowing 4 hits, 0 runs, 1 walk, and 6 strikeouts in 6 innings pitched. Framber Valdez allowed all 3 runs on 7 hits. He also allowed 2 walks and just 3 strikeouts. He was pulled after 4.1 innings. So game 2 of that series today. And then we also hit the Royals first 5 run line plus half a run at minus 128. That cashed in a 0-0 tie after 5 innings. The Royals went on to win 1-0. Cole Reagans was flawless. He had 4 hits, 0 runs, 0 walks, 8 strikeouts in 6 innings pitched. 80 pitches. He could have gone deeper into the game, but was dealing with some calf spasms, so he just wanted to play it safe, assuming that they're going to make a deep postseason run there. But it worked out for them. Corbin Burns worked his way through 8 innings, allowing the 1 lone run in the game on 5 hits, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. The only run of the game was pretty suiting, came off the bat of Bobby Witt, who could have been an MVP candidate if it worked for Aaron Judge. He hits an RBI single to give the Royals the lead. And then we cashed the Mets team total over 3.5 at even odds. They scored their first 3 runs in the top of the second, cashed that 4th run in the top of the 5th. So their wild postseason push continues as they go on to win 8-4 against the Brewers. Game 2 for all of those today. And then no bets on the Braves and Padres, but that was an exciting game nonetheless. Michael King, 12 strikeouts, no runs allowed. He leaves the game to a standing ovation. Fernando Tatis Jr. is the one who puts the game-winning runs on the board with a 415-foot home run. Just absolute vibes in San Diego. That was a fun one to watch with the yellow towels swirling. Harrison, were you able to catch any of these games? Any thoughts?
Yeah, the one that caught my attention, the one that I was watching as a Yankee fan and a Yankee backer, I was watching the Astros, and I was just hoping the Astros lose. And get down to that bottom of the ninth there. They had the bases loaded, and I'm worried for the Tigers, but they were able to pull it out. So now the Tigers continue to carry on that momentum that they came into the postseason with. I think, Grace, if you look at their record this year against left-handers, it's pretty impressive. In terms of their win-loss record. So going to be interested to see how they kind of try to continue this going forward. And obviously how the bracket continues to play out for those teams who are waiting to get their playoff series started this weekend.
Yeah, Detroit doing a little opener bulk bullpen game today, starting Tyler Holton and then Hunter Brown, Houston's ace, going on the other side. So it's no surprise Astros a heavy favorite in this one. I'm with you, Harrison. I kind of hope the Tigers pull out the win here and continue that Cinderella run, but we'll be capping that game and all the other ones later on in the show. Let's get on to the NFL side of things now, and we'll start with the news that broke last night. Davante Adams has informed the Raiders he wants to be traded. This is according to several reports, and this comes after Antonio Pierce, or at least his account, was caught hitting like on an Instagram post that said Adams had played his final snap as a Raider. That like was later removed. Michael Lombardi,
too late. It's too late.
I know, right? Things live forever on the internet. And according to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, the Raiders have begun reaching out to other teams to gauge interest in a trade. So we're hearing it from both sides now. Michael, you have been talking about this for months at this point. Why is it finally coming to a head now?
Well, because everything that we all thought would happen has occurred. I mean, they have no quarterback. He can't get the football. He was asking for more money. Remember, this offseason was the offseason of all the wide receivers. Everybody got increases. Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson's new deal, A.J. Brown, and Davante Adams thinks he's still in that category. When they interviewed general manager candidates after firing Dave Ziegler, pretty much most of the GM candidates, not the one that they hired in Tom Telesco, all told Mark Davis they should trade Davante Adams. He's a declining player. He's not the same guy, doesn't have the same separation, and the value will never be higher than it is this offseason. And, of course, the Raiders, in their infinite wisdom, neglected it. And Antonio Pierce went and supported him. But now he's not getting any more money. He can't get the football. There's a video on YouTube where he's complaining about, they're going to kill me here. I've never been hit so many times in my life in terms of when he's getting the ball over the middle of the field. So, look, it's going to be a reduced value. Obviously, you would think the Chiefs would want to be involved because they need a receiver, but I can't see the Raiders and the Chiefs making a deal. The last time they did that, Willie Brown, the former Hall of Fame corner, went from Denver to the Raiders, and that was the last trade I think they ever made together. So this has been ongoing. I mean, this is not really a new story. It's coming out because the Raiders have tried to deny it for so long, but now Adams is fed up with everybody in the building. And I think, to me, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the other story that I think is interesting is Max Crosby didn't even show up to the game on Sunday. I mean, he's got a hamstring or something like that. He didn't even show up to the game. Now, I know they won and they were fortunate, Harrison, but to me, I think there's a lot of problems within that building, all of which we talked about all offseason.
Yeah, that the Max Crosby thing is very interesting, and I'm sure we'll get to that later on in the show. But if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, if you're the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Kansas City Chiefs come to you, Michael, and say, hey, we have a draft compensation that's the best on the market. I know you don't want to trade anybody in your division, but hold on here. You got to think about the next season, the seasons after that. it would hurt me if I was in the Vegas front office, but you got to go out there and get the best value. So if the Kansas City Chiefs, without Rashee Rice, without Hollywood Brown, and relying on Xavier Worthy and going for 3 straight Super Bowl championships, something that's never been done, I would go ahead and take that offer from the Kansas City Chiefs if I were the Vegas Raiders. Obviously, we don't know what the Vegas Raiders are going to. Well, we don't know what the Kansas City Chiefs are going to offer. We don't know what other teams are going to offer. But this notion that the Chiefs should be out the running because they're in the AFC West, I think that would be not the wisest move, because again, you got to go out there and get the best. Shouldn't the best value win, regardless of where that is? Shouldn't the best value win at all costs? And that's what I'm thinking about as we get into this whole Davante Adams controversy. And I'm sure there's a number of teams that it makes sense for as well that we'll get through throughout the course of this show. But I don't think the Chiefs should be ruled out at all. I don't think it would be wise to rule them out if I were in the Vegas Raiders front office.
Well, look, I think to me that, this is just part of the way the Raiders have been. Al Davis believes you don't trade to within the division. I think that still permeates through the building. But I think the real question which you ask is, what is the value of the player, right? And, here's a guy who's got 19 catches. He averages 11 yards. He doesn't have the same top-end speed. He still has good eye-hand coordination. There's no question about that. But is somebody willing to pay a second-round pick and then absorb the salary? I think that's the big issue, Grace. You got to take on the salary. You got to pay a declining player, and he's not going to get better as the years go on. Yeah,
well, I'm sure there's a lot of teams who would still like to sign Davante Adams at this point. We'll get into that conversation a little bit more after this break. You're listening to the VSiN Morning Line.
Time. There's nothing more valuable. It's what drives everyone to make the most of every moment. We celebrate living large in the now. In a city where time disappears, we create experiences that electrify the soul and memories that will last forever. We go big, we go all night, and here, everyone is invited. So get loose and get loud.
This is Circa. You'll have the time of your life.
Coming up Wednesday on Follow the Money, more playoffs in MLB, and we'll talk NFL with Sal Palantonio, Rich Gannon, and Matt Humans. Follow the Money weekdays, 4 to 7 Eastern on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Want to see who at VSiN is on a hot streak? Go to VSiN.com/picks to see all the selections and weekly leaderboard of VSiN hosts, writers, and guests. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber and get every pick sent to your inbox daily. Just head to VSiN.com/pro.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's Late Night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, where we are breaking down this Davante Adams situation. We've now heard the news from both sides. The Adams camp wants out, and the Raiders are looking for options, trying to get the best value for their star wide receiver. So the reports are out, but what does Davante Adams say is next for himself? Yesterday, he went on the Kay Adams show, and here's what he said.
And what I'm hearing is that here's what a lot of people think you may never play another down as a Raider. What would you say to that?
All I can control is this talk we're having right here. And then after we're done with this, all I can control is the next thing that I'm on to. So I'm going to get up in a minute and get a nice workout in. And that's all I can control.
Yeah, it's all he can control. But obviously, he's the one who started the conversation. And so, look, I think people are going to be shocked at what the value is perceived. You're talking about a 32-year-old receiver who's due to make $16 million this year. It's kind of hard to think that, some of these teams that I see are mentioned for the Washington Commanders. Why would Washington, who's rebuilding their team with young, youthful players, why would they trade for Davante Adams and give up a high asset as a second-round pick? I mean, you have to understand that Adam Peters, the general manager of the Washington Commanders, he values draft picks. He's going to keep all of them, and he wants to build that team through the draft. So I think, to me, this is a hard trade to make if you're Tom Telesco, because once a player declares he wants out, then all of a sudden everybody doesn't want to pay the market value. And I think, to me, if you're going to pay a second-round pick, pay it for T. Higgins, who's got a good future, and you might have a chance to keep him through the year, as opposed to paying something for Davante Adams, which I don't think will happen, Harrison.
Yeah, I like that. I like that call on T. Higgins for the Washington Commanders. Get somebody who has maybe a longer future. But I think the sentiment why the Commanders came up because of the belief of how things could operate or how you could maximize your team. If you go back to Patrick Mahomes' first Super Bowl run, when he was on that rookie scale quarterback contract, and it allowed them to have multiple playmakers on that team. If you go back to the past couple years with Brock Purdy, and the fact that they're able to pay guys like Debo, able to pay Kittle, able to pay Trent Williams, because Brock Purdy is on that rookie scale contract. So while Jaden Daniels is on this rookie scale contract, I think the thought would be that Davante Adams could fit in now, because you don't have to pay Jaden Daniels that money for a top-scale quarterback going forward. But I think it does make more sense, to your point, though, to get somebody like T. Higgins, who will actually maybe pan out a bit better over the course of the next 3-4 years while Jaden Daniels is on that rookie-scale contract. Nonetheless, though, Michael, all you need is one, right? Like, all you need is one team to give up that second-round pick, and then other teams will have to jump in, right? Like, all you need, even though it doesn't seem ideal for a team to give up such capital to get Davante Adams, once some team gives up one, then other teams probably come follow, right?
Well, I think you have to let's just start with the salary cap, right? And so when you have to have, when you have a player who's due to make $16 million, that eliminates pretty much most of the team. Like, let's just take Seattle. They have $12 million on their cap. All right, so they really can't be a player in this. The Titans have $13 million. They can't be a player in this. So you can't take on the contract. And so the Jets have $16 million of cap room. To me, that makes the most sense of any team. The Jets have gone all in. They've declared that they're all in. And, he's got a relationship with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think it really matters. I mean, look, they signed Randall Cobb. He couldn't play last year, but they signed him anyway. He had to retire after the season. I don't think they're looking at longevity. I think they're looking about making Aaron Rodgers happy. Now, they can't make Garrett Wilson happy, so that's an issue. And, they're going off to London, but then they come back and play Buffalo after that. They're not taking the usual week off. To me, that's the team that I would keep my eye on, is the Jets, because they're desperate. Their pass offense has not been very good. They can't get the ball down the field at all. I mean, think about this. I mean, the Jets, when you break them down, and, there's been some complaints from Garrett Wilson. I mean, they've had 36 first downs in 3 games combined. Take out the 27 they got against the Patriots. They have 36 first downs in 3 games. I mean, so, who are we kidding here? Like, they're not very good offensively. They can't get it down the field. They're 20th in drives resulting in scores. They can't run the football. And I know they have Mike Williams and I know they have Garrett Wilson, but they can't throw the ball to him. So to me, Harrison, the Jets make the most sense of any team.
Michael, we rarely see this in the NFL. When you trade a player, it's usually for draft compensation. Is there a world where Jets front office and Vegas Raiders front office consider a 1-for-1? I don't give you a draft pick, but I give you Garrett Wilson, and we take back Davante Adams?
Well, I mean, there's no way they would do that. Garrett Wilson's a young player on a rookie contract. They're not going to – I mean, that Raiders would do that in a second. I mean, they would jump all over that deal. But that deal would be so lopsided. I mean, Joe Douglas hasn't been a great general manager, but he's not dumb enough to make that deal. So, you know, I mean, you can't give up a young – see, you got to count in the rookie contract, Harrison.
Yeah. What if you force the Raiders to throw in draft compensation back?
Well, I mean, then what are we getting out of it? If you look at your team down the road, you know Davante Adams is a short-term fix. You want to build a team around Garrett Wilson. It doesn't make any sense what they throw in. You know, the Raiders aren't going to throw in a high draft pick. I mean, you know, I think to me, the Raiders have issues in the offensive line, and they need to improve in that area tremendously, and they need a quarterback. You trade away assets for a receiver that you can't get the ball to. I mean, this is the whole problem that started when Josh McDaniels came into the Raiders and he trades for a wide receiver when his team isn't any good. It goes back to what Bill Walsh said back in 1984. The only time you add a great receiver to your team is when your team's really good, because what happens is exactly what's happened here. That you have a player who's unhappy and he becomes divisive from within. And so you can't really manage it. And so it becomes a bigger issue. You know, you bring in Davante Adams, well, it was because he and Derek Carr. Well, I mean, that's great, but then you ship Carr out. So to me, this has just been mismanagement by the Raiders that continues. They should have traded him this offseason, Harrison.
Yeah, that definitely makes a world of sense. I think there's a number of teams that I would love to bounce off of you, and one of those being the Buffalo Bills, in terms of what they might be able to do, even though they didn't want, even though they were.
But Buffalo has $3 million of cap room, Harrison. So, like, it's easy for us to say that team should be interested, but this is a financial thing. So you have to look at the economics of it all. And there's half the league can't even afford them. And then the other half that can afford them, that could fit them on the cap, don't want to give up a draft pick. I mean, you know, the Browns certainly could afford them. They got $44 million, but they've got so much debt next year they can't lose it. The Lions have $28 million of cap room. Look, the Patriots have $36 million of cap room. They could easily afford them. But the problem is Patriots are going to give up if you give up a second-round pick for the Patriots, you're talking about the 34th, 35th pick of the draft. Harrison?
Is it too late? Is it too late to restructure contracts? Or is that something you could only do in the offseason? Like if the Buffalo Bills look at their sheet and say, we only have $3 million, but we can restructure somebody's deal, or is that too late? Is that window gone?
Well, you would have to, but you have to take the contract in. So you have to have a day of the contract at $16 million on your cap, and then you have to create all this cap room to get it in before you restructure. That's the problem. The Raiders are going to restructure it for you because that would be cap debt for the Raiders. The Raiders are going to assume a ton of cap debt as they move forward. So the economics of this, that's why you're not trading a young player who's a first-round pick who has a 5-year contract with the potential for 6 with the franchise. So I think, to me, that's how you have to look at it. So it's really like being a detective. The teams that can possibly pull this off are not very many. You know, I mean, they're just not. Now, the Jets have the cap room, partly because of Hassan Reddick not showing up. I mean, they could trade Hassan Reddick for him. You know, you take my problem, I'll take yours. See what happens. Well, you know, now the Raiders would have to do Hassan Reddick's contract. So essentially, if they did that, they traded Hassan Reddick for Davante Adams, they would have traded a 3 in 2026 for Davante Adams. That doesn't look like a very good deal either.
Okay, so we've talked about the Chiefs, Bills, Jets being a potential landing spot. What about if we're talking about contenders that Adams likely wants to go to? What about the Cowboys? I mean, they need a threat opposite CeeDee Lamb that could allow Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert to fall into a more supporting role. I see you shaking your head, Michael.
No chance. I mean, look, the Cowboys, they have no money. I mean, they've got Parsons' deal out there. They spent the whole offseason not spending money. I don't think the Cowboys see their problem as they need another receiver. I know the media thinks they do because the media's answer to everything is grab another receiver. The Cowboys' problem is their defensive line. They can't get off blocks. They have a bad defense. I mean, the problem is with their defense. They can score points. They just can't. And they need a running back. I mean, they need a running back and defensive lineman. Just because a receiver's available, it's not. I mean, like, look, when I go in a donut shop, I want to eat all the donuts, but you can't eat them all. You just can't have every receiver, Grace.
If Davante Adams were a donut, which flavor? I'm just kidding. Okay. Good discussion, guys. Coming up next on the other side, we will continue our NFL breakdowns, looking at some of the market movements early in this week. You're watching the VSiN Morning Line.
VSiN's got you covered for the start of the season with our football special. For $175, you'll get access to everything VSiN has to offer. With VSiN Pro, you'll receive daily picks straight to your inbox, detailed analysis on every game, and exclusive data like our betting splits to help you become a sharper bettor. Get all of this for just $175 through the Super Bowl. Or try a monthly subscription and get your first 30 days for only $9.99. Don't miss out on this offer. Sign up now at VSiN.com/subscribe.
This is VSiN,
the Sports Betting Network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, where we are now getting you ready for Week 5 of the NFL season and taking a little look at some of the market movement on these NFL spreads. We will start with the battle of incompetency between the Patriots and the Dolphins. Lots of line flips in this one. You look at the summer look ahead. Patriots were a 4.5-point dog. The look ahead last week, they became a 2-point favorite. Then they became a 1-point dog. And now after the Dolphins' primetime loss, Patriots once again a 1-point favorite. Michael, what is your reaction to all these swings?
I mean, if I'm Miami, if I'm Stephen Ross and I'm the owner of the Miami Dolphins and I just watched our team play and I think now I'm a dog to this New England team, which is can't score unless they can run the football, I would be like, what are we doing here? Like, this is really concerning. Look, Miami hasn't officially announced that Huntley's going to be the starting quarterback. I assume that's going to be the case, but it has not been. It's to be determined. There's 2 quarterbacks this week that haven't been announced as starter. Indianapolis, which we understand because of Richardson's injury, and Miami, which we'll learn more about them today. But look, in the 2 games that Mike McDaniels had to operate this Miami offense without Tua, he's shown no signs of changing the offense or adapting the offense or trying to figure out how to move the football. The offensive line is horrible. It really is. And this front he's going to play against New England, that's the strength of their team. That's the best part of what they can do. Christian Gonzalez can cover anybody that he needs to cover. So, to me, this is a matchup that I can understand why New England is favorite, because both teams offensively, Harrison, are just not good enough.
Yeah, that is for sure. And then also on the Miami Dolphins side of the ball, there was a wealth of injuries that they're trying to overcome. Obviously, Tua being the biggest name of them. But even if you go back to Monday Night Football, Jalen Phillips, one of their pass rushers, left the game as well with a knee injury. So I think for me, as it pertains to this line movement, I'll be curious to see what that injury report is going to come out like later today, what players are going to be available, particularly on the defensive side of the ball for the Miami Dolphins, and because we already know the concerns on the offensive side of the ball. This one, Grace, overall, though, keep me all the way away from this game. I don't even know. Like, it's going to be a nasty one. I guess looking at the total would make a lot of sense, but I feel like the books are probably already all the way ahead of that in terms of looking at the total. So this one is just a stay away when you have 2 incompetent offenses going against each other. Also, the factor in that it is a divisional matchup as well. I think there might be some if we see the number get a bit bigger on one side or the other, then maybe there's some comfort in just betting that it'll be a close game. But other than that, it's a nasty game to be betting on.
Yeah, the total, it looks like, I'm pretty sure I saw some 37s earlier in the week, but it's been bet down to 35.5, the lowest total on the board now. So you're right about that. Another market flip we're watching is the Texans and the Bills. This one has gone back and forth for the last 2 weeks, but now as it stands, well, you know what? I don't even look. I'm seeing 1-point favorite on each side, so it's essentially a pick'em at this point. And it did reach real pick'em status at 1 point yesterday. It looks like Houston is a 1-point dog right now. But Michael, your reaction to this game?
Well, I mean, look, I think there's a little bit of an overreaction to the marketplace to Houston. I know they're 3-1, but they're in some games where they haven't been perfect. I mean, in the Indianapolis game, they kicked the field goals. They kicked those 50-yard field goals would help them win the game. And C.J. Stroud's really a better player at home than he is on the road. But I think there is some vulnerability in their team, and Buffalo comes in. It's a better matchup for Buffalo. I mean, Houston's not going to be a team that's overly physical, that's going to push him around like Baltimore did. So, look, I think a lot of this betting is the approach of where they just feel like there's no way that Josh Allen's going to lose 2 games in a row. He's going to come back. Stephon Diggs knows everything that Buffalo's going to do. He's going to help out the coaches. But I just think, to me, that this Houston team, because they're not physical enough, they don't run the football well enough, it's hard for them always to get control of the game. And I think Sean McDermott's a really good defensive coordinator, so I think he'll have a good approach to this. But to me, if you get in this situation, you're always going to favor Josh Allen, Harrison.
Yeah, Josh Allen with his ability to run the ball and also find his receivers, despite not having a number one true target, I think has an opportunity to play complementary football and potentially control time of possession in this game against the Houston Texans. Again, for me, though, on the other side of the ball and why this one is going to be more important for me to see the injury report than anything else is Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon has missed the last 2 games after suffering that injury where I think he believed he was hip drop tackled. So they've been having to use Cam Akers the past couple of games. If Joe Mixon is out there, maybe there's an opportunity for the Houston Texans to play more complementary football and really not play into Sean McDermott's maybe defensive scheme or make it a little bit harder for Sean McDermott to scheme this game up going into this matchup on Sunday. You also have to factor in, will Tank Dell be out there as well? We know Teron Johnson has been out for the last 2 weeks at least for the Buffalo Bills. So will the Houston Texans have their full complement of playmakers out there? I think definitely has to play a factor into this line and how you bet this game, because you need to play complementary football against quality defenses like Buffalo.
I think
think Tank Dell,
he
was out last year. He was out last week with a chest injury. He didn't practice on Friday, whereas Joe Mixon was limited with his ankle injury. So I think, to me, there's probably a better chance that Mixon goes based on last week's injury report. Today we'll get a better injury report on Houston, but I agree. I mean, they need Joe Mixon in this game if they're going to win, Grace.
Yeah, just looking at this line specifically, I think the Texans took in a lot of public money the first 4 weeks of the season, but they've gone 0-3-1 against the spread, did not cover as a 3-point favorite against the Colts, pushed as a 6-point favorite against the Bears, lost big time as a 1.5-point favorite against the Vikings, and then did not cover the 5.5 against the Jags. So it kind of feels like the market is catching up to them now. But Harrison, as you said, if they get Joe Mixon back, that could be a huge boost to them. Thursday night football, we got a divisional game between the Falcons and Bucks, and this line is getting smaller. The Falcons were as high as a 3-point favorite earlier in this week. The spread now down to 1.5. Michael, how do you feel about this line movement?
Well, I think it makes sense because if really you peel back the layer on this Atlanta Falcon team, I mean, it's just not very good offensively. I don't think they've improved from last year, or they really haven't. I mean, they've only had the ball offensively for 24 minutes, right? And their defense is on the field constantly. They can't get off the field on third down. They're 47% on third down, and they've only converted in 3 games. They've only converted so many third downs. I think they've converted 11 third downs in 3 games. So they're not good on third down. They can't stop the opponent on third down. They've been outscored by 10 points in their 4 games. So to me, and then they don't make explosive plays. I mean, this is the whole story we talked about last year. They don't have a pass rush, and they can't make any explosive plays. And they're 29th in the red zone. They can't score. And Kirk Cousins, to me, looks limited. And this Bucs team is the opposite, right? This Bucs team can make plays. They're explosive. They're down the field. They're actually running the football better this year with Irvin. He averages 5.8 a carry, and they're the 7th best team in scoring and drives ending in scores. So, and their way they've played defensively last week, I think it'll be a challenge. Now they got to play the run. Vita Vea's going to play, which helps their run defense. So, Grace, to me, this makes sense. I mean, this team in Atlanta, for all the conversation, it's kind of a strange team because they have no explosiveness. They can run the ball. They're 10th in the National Football League in average per rush per attempt. Yet they only try to run it. They're 29th in the league in attempts, so they don't even try to run the football enough. And I think they need to kind of let Bijan Robinson carry it. But here's the problem: Bijan Robinson is on the injury report. We're not sure he's going to play.
Yeah, the Falcons are not as good as their record show. We've talked about that several times, and it looks like the market is kind of reading through that right now. Before we move on to the next game, the VSiN Morning Line has a special offer. This week only, you can score 40% off our football season special when you use the code VML. Sign up now and get full VSiN Pro access to everything we do from now through the Super Bowl, including daily best bets, 19 hours of live programming, proven betting systems used by professional handicappers, and exclusive betting splits, which are updated every 5 minutes. That's VSiN.com. Get your VSiN Pro access using the promo code VML for 40% off the football package. One more game we want to get to before we close out this block. The Bears and the Panthers. Bears were kind of sitting. They were 4-point favorites on the look ahead, but this line has slowly been going down to 3.5 where it stands now. Maybe an overreaction to the Panthers' recent wins, Michael. What do you think?
Well, I mean, they've only won once, right, Grace? So, I mean, this is 4 weeks in a row the Panthers have been the darlings of the betting world, right? I mean, week 1, they were the darlings. They got blown out by the Saints. You know, week 2, they were going to make a comeback. They got blown out. Then they made the change at quarterback against the Raiders. And, you know, I don't know what people, if they were actually taking money. But they've been taking money now for a while. They took money against Cincinnati. The Sharps or whoever they are, whoever those people are, Grace, love the Carolina Panthers. I don't know if I get on board with them. I really can't. Their defense is hurting.
No, I don't. And you're right. It's one win, but just the fact that they scored more than 3 points felt like a win to me. Okay, coming up next, it's our first guest of the day joining the show, Will Hill, with his best bets on the VSiN Morning Line.
In the heart of downtown Las Vegas, a sports oasis awaits. Stadium Swim, the ultimate outdoor amphitheater, built for the ultimate sports fan, with a colossal screen that brings the game closer than ever. Reserve a daybed, private cabana, or lounge in the center of it all. 6 pools to dive into as the game heats up. And the best part, there's never an off-season. Open 365 days a year. Stadium Swim, it's always spectator season.
Looking for the ultimate sports betting podcasts? VSiN has got you covered. With a wide range of podcasts covering every major sport, we're here to help you make smarter bets every season. The Baseball Betting Show with Greg Peterson gives you daily insights into finding value on each day's MLB card. And check out Long Shots, where we deep dive into the world of golf betting, providing you with expert insights to help you bet every tournament. Find all of these podcasts and more at VSiN.com/podcasts or your favorite podcast platform.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for tapping in with the VSiN Morning Line. Harrison Sanford, Michael Lombardi, and Grace Remington joining you on this Hump Day Wednesday as we look ahead to another week of football on the NFL slate, college football slate, and even we'll also do some baseball betting as well. And to help us do all of that in this segment, joining us on the Progressive Guest Line, VSiN contributor and host of the Shoulda Bet More podcast and the Bear Bets podcast, Will Hill, joining us. Will, thank you for joining us early on this Wednesday. Let's just get right into the bets, huh? And we'll start with the college football slate. Big game this weekend between Michigan and Washington. How are you looking at this one with a 2.5-point spread?
Yeah, a little national title rematch here. And look, new teams, new coaches. You can't really take anything from the game in January. But I like Washington here. I think this is a tough spot for Michigan, flying across the country. And I just think Michigan is still a one-dimensional team. And you have a good coaching staff in Washington with Fish, who is going to be able to spread Michigan out. Belichick defensively can take away the run, and Michigan can't throw the ball. Michigan has turned into a team that's run only. They're basically a service academy. And I just think Washington, that was a tough loss Friday night against Rutgers. They should have won that game. They kind of gave that game away with missed kicks and just some misfortune. But I just like the coaching advantage here for Washington. I think Michigan's limited. I think Washington wins this game.
How about Ohio State play Iowa? Iowa's the third best winningest team in the Big Ten. You would never know it based on the PR perception that they get. But Ohio State's laying 19.5 in Iowa City. You still like Ohio State to cover?
I don't think Iowa can keep up. I just think Iowa falls behind, and especially on the road here against Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State's going to get into the 20s, 30s against pretty much anyone. And once Iowa falls behind and they have to play catch up, how is that going to go for them? I just think this is going to be ugly. If you don't want to lay the 19 or the 20, maybe you play an Iowa team total under 10.5. But to me, this gets out of hand. I think this is a game where, look, Ohio State hasn't been overly impressive. If you watch them, some of these teams have moved the ball on them. The Marshalls of the world, Akron, that was a choppy start. Ohio State really hasn't been tested yet. But this is a game where I think Iowa – here's the thing, too, watching Iowa. This is not the prototypical, elite Iowa defense that we're used to seeing. They still have their same issues throwing the ball, but they're not the lockdown defense we've seen. I mean, we saw Iowa State down big, erase a deficit with big passing plays against them. So I think Ohio State puts a number out here on Iowa.
Let's take a look at Syracuse and UNLV. The Orangemen could be undefeated if it weren't for a game-winning field goal in the final seconds by Stanford, but they're probably one of the more improved teams in the country that not a lot of people are talking about, thanks to Kyle McCord. On the other side, UNLV dealing with all types of emotions. How are you capping this game?
I like Syracuse here. I will take the 6.5. Now, look, when the line is 6.5 and we're sitting here on a Wednesday and the game's not till Saturday, you might as well wait, because who knows? You might get a 7. You might even get a 7.5. And look, if it goes down to 6, it's not that big of a difference between 6.5 and 6 as opposed to 6.5, 7. That being said, look, I like this UNLV team all year. I've watched them a lot. I've bet them a lot. Odom is a tremendous coach. I was shocked this line was 6.5. I thought this was more of a field goal line, if that. I think the look-ahead line in the summer was basically a pick 'em. I don't know how you can downgrade Syracuse that much. They played pretty well here. That was a tough loss to Stanford, but they throw the ball really well. I mean, this team throws for almost 400 yards a game. Efficient throwing the ball with McCord, who's gotten a new lease on life here in Syracuse. So to me, this will be a fun game here in Vegas. But the back door will be open. To me, it's just a field goal game. I'll take Syracuse here plus the points.
Looking at Penn State's schedule here, Will, in 2 weeks, they take on a ranked USC team. So it could classify as a trap game for them taking on UCLA this weekend as 28-point favorites. But you still like them laying the 4 touchdowns.
Yes, I will lay it here with Penn State. Boy, this is Cade McCown is not walking through that door for UCLA. It is tough times here for the Bruins, and they're getting outgained by a yard per play. They're giving up over 30 points per game. Their numbers are really, really bad. And they walk into Happy Valley, a Penn State team that wasn't that sharp last week against Illinois. And you got a coach in Franklin who, I mean, let's be honest here. Let's be frank, no pun intended. he knows the spread, and he's going to run up the score, and he's going to punch one in late. I mean, this is a team, they were favored, I think, by 48.5 against Kent State. They're up 42-0 with a minute left, and he runs it in for a touchdown. This happens all the time with him. It's a little joke among us bettors that Franklin's got the ball with a chance to cover in a blowout. He's like Mahomes in the Super Bowl. He's going to march that ball down the field, make his donors happy, make his alum happy, and cover these big numbers. So I wouldn't want any part of UCLA. I think Penn State knows the spread. They're going to try to make everybody happy and cover it, and they're capable of covering it. So I think Penn State wins this game by 30-plus points, and I think if they have to cover late, they will.
Obviously, you weren't impressed with Bobby Saleh's Jet team on Sunday because as they travel to London, now I hope Bobby's looked at the weather in London and brought his raincoats because that was what he wasn't expecting last Sunday. But, I mean, you're not in favor of the Jets this week. I think there's a lot of money coming in on the Jets, but you're on your Vikings side this week.
Yeah, they had a good week of prep last week, though. Don't forget that, as Salah reminded us. We had a good week of prep. I know it's rain. It's just, boy, that team is not well coached. And hey, if you don't get this one, you got the Bills. I mean, a 2-4 start here for the Jets is in the cards. I don't think Rodgers looked healthy. He took a hit and just didn't move well the rest of the game. And Denver, who's got an underrated defense, Denver has a lot of good players on defense. That's an underrated team. They blitz Rodgers coming off the bus, and now you get Flores. Flores is going to do the same, and you have little issues with the Jets of the cadence and, should they do the hard count? Should they not do the hard count? You could tell you don't have to, you don't have to be a detective to read between the lines that Rodgers is getting frustrated with Salah, and there's a disconnect there. I don't know how that ends. This is Rodgers' show. He brought in Hackett. He's been an advocate of Salah, but you can tell there's certainly some tension there. I just like the Minnesota team. I think that Flores with the blitzing of Rodgers, who wasn't moving well last week. If he's not moving well this week, and we'll see how that plays out on this field here in London, I think that's going to go poorly. And look, Minnesota, I mean, you have to start to believe at some point. I've been skeptical, and as a Viking fan, I know this only ends in one way, and it's an abject heartbreak sometime in the playoffs with just a disaster of a loss that's going to break my heart at some point. But look, I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts. I think Minnesota wins this game, and in Minnesota, with Addison back, with the offensive line, with Jones, Minnesota looks like they're for real here.
Washington is a 3.5 point favorite, depending where you look, against the Cleveland Browns. Jaden Daniels has set the league on fire in his first 4 starts. And this Cleveland defense was top in the league last year, not as efficient as it was last year, but still good nonetheless. How do you see this matchup playing out?
Yeah, it's a tough thing in the NFL, but you will do well in the NFL if you can just basically eliminate the last thing you saw. I will take Cleveland plus the 3.5. I just don't know. Are we at the point where Washington's 3.5 points better than anybody, much less a Cleveland team that's 1-3? They're desperate. I mean, this is a team that was in the playoffs last year, won 11 games, and expected to be back in there this year. So at 1-3, they're not going to just roll over and die. And it feels like the season just started, but these teams are on the brink of basically, not being eliminated. But boy, 1-4 is a hell of a hole to dig out of. So I think you're going to get Cleveland's best effort. I didn't think Watson. I didn't watch every play, but I watched a lot of that last week. I didn't think Watson was awful. He had Cooper with just a terrible drop that led to a pick. He was okay. I mean, he didn't throw for a ton of yards, but to me, you got the desperate team. You're getting points, and I just think this line is an overreaction here to Washington. I'll take Cleveland plus 3.5.
It does feel like it is a playoff game for the Cleveland Browns going into that matchup against the Washington Commanders. Speaking of playoff games, we have an actual one in Major League Baseball tonight. Sean Manaea on the bump for the New York Mets as they take on Frankie Montas and the Milwaukee Brewers after the Mets got the win yesterday, 8-4. How are you capping this game with it being a pick'em in game number 2 of this wild card series?
I like the Mets. I think the Mets have a little mojo going, karma, call it whatever you want. That was a great win the other day against Atlanta, where that was a back and forth game. They win again yesterday, score 5 runs, all with 2 outs in the 5th inning. This Mets team's got something going, and they just saw Montas Friday night, so they'll be used to him. Montas hasn't pitched great here. Milwaukee does not have great pitching. This is a team that overachieved, was only supposed to win 78 or so games, and the Mets have a really good, really deep lineup. I think the Mets win, and if they do, that sets up a Mets-Phillies NLDS Lombardi. That will be fun here in the Northeast because that is a fun, heated rivalry. So should be some good playoff baseball, but I do think the Mets get it done and eventually take on the Phillies here.
Yeah,
that would be great. I mean, if we had that, Yeah, if we had that, that would be great. Plus, Vic Fangio's under tremendous heat here in Philly. I mean, just all these worlds colliding here. It's just unbelievable. WIP would be lighting up. It would be amazing, Harrison.
Yes, indeed. If the Eagles can just get the Phillies to just make a long, extended run in the playoffs, it'll definitely give them some cover out there in the Philadelphia market while they're going through their tough times right now. Will, thank you again for joining us on this Wednesday morning, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, see you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Will.
All right, coming up. All right, thanks, Will. Coming up, Davante Adams wants out. Where should and where will he go? We'll continue to investigate the Davante Adams situation next, right here on the VSiN Morning Line.
A new football season means a new lineup on VSiN. Start your day with sharp betting analysis.